happens next?
That is correct, Becky. I mean, it's been abundantly clear over the better part of the last year since the Hamas October 7th attack against Israel that, in fact, Iran is not interested in escalation, very much just wants to maintain deterrence and allow its proxies in the region, that ring of fire that it's established in the region around Israel, in Lebanon with Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the various militias in Syria and Iraq, much rather have to fight that way via proxy, via their Arab allies, than fight directly, not for any reason other than that Iran understands that it's vulnerable, that is, it is inferior to Israel in a direct match between their two militaries. But so what we saw yesterday is an attempt to restore much lost deterrence. And there's a very active debate within that axis, that Iranian axis in the region. Those of us who watch their TV channels and read their newspapers can pick up on that. Those that are arguing that let's not get baited into a war, which Israel seems to want, and others who say, well, we're going to get there anyway if we don't restore that lost deterrence. And so what we saw is an attempt to restore some of that lost deterrence and very quickly pivot and hope that the United States would help keep Israel at bay and keep things where they are.
I think it's important to just pursue this. The perception is that for many around the region and around the world is that Iran is weakened, especially after the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, the head of Hamas, and then Hassan Nasrallah, the chief of Hezbollah. But take a listen to what the IRGC commander said yesterday after Iran launched its attack.
If the Zionist regime that has gone crazy is not controlled by America and Europe and wants to continue these crimes or wants to do anything against our sovereignty and territorial integrity, tonight's operation will be repeated several times stronger and all their infrastructure will be targeted.
And there really is no reason to dispute that. The fact of the matter is Iran does have the capabilities, doesn't it? And this can get a whole lot worse.
Yeah, and thank you for playing that clip, because to my point, Iran is very much betting at this point that the U.S., but also the European, but let's face it, the U.S. primarily here will intervene to be a circuit breaker. And it's very significant. It's very telling that there hasn't been many attacks on American bases and facilities in Iraq and Syria by the Iranian proxies as of late. Iran does not want to draw the U.S. into this fight on behalf of Israel. It very much understands that President Biden, in a tightly contested election, does not want to see oil spike to some 200 barrels per gallon at this point as a result of a significant escalation. So you hear that in the statement of this Iranian official, essentially saying it's on the U.S. right now to keep Israel at bay. And that's the Iranian play at this point.
The fear is that this cycle of tit for tat, and I think we can call it that, although it's pretty scary stuff at this point, is going to continue. So while some, at least in Israel, where I am, may think, look, it's over, this is the end, we have reestablished our, security and deterrence. Is this actually, could you argue, just the beginning at this point?
I think so. I mean, yeah, I don't think that the Iranian wager of the administration stepping in to prohibit Israel from responding significantly, I don't think that's a winning wager. And I think that's being also reflected by the early statements that we're hearing from Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor in the U.S., and others. The administration understands that Israel will have to respond. This Iranian attack is materially different than the one that we saw back in April. What I think we have to consider is both the timing and the scope of the Israeli response. I think there's a preference, certainly here in Washington, not to see, for example, Israel go after Iran's oil facilities or ports that allow for the export of energy and oil out of the region. I also think that going for the nuclear facilities would be something that would be very dramatic and this administration would not like to see. So in considering the targeting, perhaps an equitable response would be limited to IRGC targets, military targets within Iran to weaken its capabilities to fire such barrages of missiles in the future and maybe even expose its air defenses to Israeli future attacks. But I don't think we go all the way to the nuclear option, so to speak. I think there will be a response. The timing will be interesting because Israel, as their officials keep saying, is currently engaged in a 7-front war. And so there might be some strategic thinking in Israel that this might be the time to prioritize Lebanon and Hezbollah, which is a formidable enemy in and of itself, before perhaps going to the top possible or the most escalatory reaction against Iran at this point.
Firas, it's always good to have you. Thank you very much indeed. And folks, do keep an eye on that oil price, as we were just discussing. Well, still to come on CNN, we will break down the key takeaways